History is often remembered through kings, wars, and revolutions. But sometimes the most important moments weren't battles at all. They were decisions. A commander choosing to retreat instead of attack. A ruler refusing to destroy an enemy. An explorer sailing west instead of east. An inventor pursuing an impossible idea. Most people living through these moments had no idea they were standing at a crossroads for civilization itself. Yet a single decision made in a palace, on a battlefield, aboard a ship, or inside a workshop would quietly alter the destiny of billions of people who had not even been born. History is full of accidents, but it is also shaped by choices. These are 10 decisions that didn't just change a nation, they changed the course of human history. When people study history, they often search for inevitable patterns: the rise and fall of empires, economic cycles, technological progress, population growth, climate change. These large forces undeniably shape civilizations over centuries. Yet historians also recognize another powerful influence: contingency. Contingency is the idea that history is not entirely predetermined. Certain moments genuinely could have unfolded differently. A single decision does not erase geography, economics, or culture, but at critical turning points, individual choices can redirect those larger forces in ways that echo across generations. Sometimes those decisions belong to famous rulers. Sometimes they come from engineers, merchants, scientists, or military commanders. Sometimes the people making them understand their importance. More often, they do not. The decisions in this documentary were not chosen because they were morally good or bad. Some produced prosperity, others unleashed suffering. Several continue to provoke debate among historians. What connects them is something else. Each shifted humanity onto a different path, politically, scientifically, economically, or culturally. Together, they revealed an uncomfortable truth: the world we consider normal was never inevitable. It was built one decision at a time. Decision 1. Alexander turns east. In 334 BCE, Alexander III of Macedon crossed the Hellespont and invaded the Persian Empire. That decision alone changed history. But an even more consequential choice came after his stunning victories. He did not stop. After defeating Darius III, Alexander could have consolidated his empire in the Near East. Instead, he continued eastward through Central Asia and eventually into northwestern India. His campaign spread Greek language, philosophy, science, architecture, and political ideas across an enormous territory. The resulting Hellenistic world became one of history's greatest cultural exchanges. Greek ideas mixed with Egyptian traditions, Persian administration, Mesopotamian knowledge, and Indian influences. Centuries later, Roman civilization would inherit much of this Hellenistic legacy. Without Alexander's decision to keep advancing, the intellectual foundations of the Mediterranean world and eventually much of Western civilization might have developed very differently. Decision 2. Julius Caesar crosses the Rubicon. In 49 BCE, Julius Caesar faced an impossible choice. The Roman Senate ordered him to surrender command of his army before returning to Rome. Obeying meant political ruin. Refusing meant civil war. Caesar chose war. Crossing the small Rubicon River violated Roman law and effectively declared rebellion against the Republic. According to later tradition, he remarked, "The die is cast." Whether those exact words were spoken remains uncertain. The decision itself, however, is beyond dispute. Caesar's victory destroyed the already fragile balance of the Roman Republic. Within a generation, Augustus established the Roman Empire. For centuries, Roman law, engineering, language, administration, and military organization shaped Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Many legal systems, political institutions, and even modern languages still carry Roman influence. One river crossing altered the political architecture of half the known world. Decision 3. Constantine embraces Christianity. Early in the 4th century, Christianity remained a minority religion within the Roman Empire. Then, Emperor Constantine made a choice that historians continue to debate. Following his victory at the Battle of the Milvian Bridge in 312 CE, Constantine increasingly supported Christianity. The Edict of Milan legalized Christian worship. Imperial patronage followed. Churches expanded. Councils established doctrine. Christianity gradually evolved from a persecuted faith into one of history's dominant religions. This decision influenced European politics, philosophy, education, art, ethics, and international history for more than 1,700 years. Whether Constantine acted primarily from sincere belief, political calculation, or a combination of both remains debated. Its historical consequences are not. Decision 4. Genghis Khan integrates instead of simply destroying. Genghis Khan is remembered for conquest and extraordinary violence. Yet one of his most significant decisions came after victory. Rather than merely destroying conquered societies, he frequently incorporated skilled administrators, engineers, artisans, merchants, and scholars into the expanding Mongol Empire. The empire became an enormous network connecting East Asia, Central Asia, the Middle East, and Eastern Europe. Trade expanded, technology spread. Papermaking, gunpowder knowledge, navigation techniques, and commercial practices moved more rapidly across Eurasia. The Pax Mongolica created conditions that encouraged one of history's greatest periods of long-distance exchange. The Mongol conquests brought immense devastation, but they also accelerated globalization centuries before the modern era. Decision 5. Zheng He stops sailing. In the early 14th century, Ming China possessed one of the world's most impressive naval fleets. Admiral Zheng He commanded enormous treasure voyages across Southeast Asia, India, Arabia, and East Africa. These expeditions demonstrated China's wealth, technology, and maritime capabilities. Then, imperial priorities changed. Court officials gradually ended the voyages. Large-scale naval expeditions ceased. Shipbuilding restrictions followed. Resources shifted towards internal defense and northern frontiers. Historians continued debating why these policies emerged. Fiscal concerns, political rivalries, changing strategic priorities, and threats from northern nomadic powers all likely played important roles. Whatever the reasons, the decision proved consequential. As China turned inward, European maritime powers increasingly expanded across the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. The age of exploration would soon be led by Portugal and Spain rather than Ming China.
Decision 6. Columbus sails west. In 1492, Christopher Columbus persuaded the Spanish crown to support an ambitious proposal. Rather than reaching Asia by sailing around Africa, he would sail west across the Atlantic. His calculations underestimated Earth's circumference and overestimated Asia's eastern extent. He survived largely because two continents unknown to Europeans lay between Europe and Asia. Columbus did not achieve his intended destination. His voyage, nevertheless, initiated sustained contact between previously isolated hemispheres. The Columbian Exchange transformed global history. Crops, animals, diseases, technologies, Peoples and ideas crossed oceans on an unprecedented scale. Potatoes, maize, tomatoes, horses, cattle, sugar, and countless other exchanges reshaped agriculture, economies, demographics, and ecosystems worldwide. Few individual decisions have produced consequences affecting more people over a longer period. Decision 7. Gutenberg pursues movable type printing. Printing existed long before Johannes Gutenberg. Woodblock printing had flourished in East Asia for centuries. Movable type had also appeared in earlier forms. Gutenberg's achievement was combining existing technologies, including durable metal movable type, oil-based inks, and an efficient press in the 15th century Europe. His decision to pursue large-scale printing transformed the economics of knowledge. Books became dramatically cheaper. Ideas spread faster. Literacy expanded. Scientific discoveries circulated more rapidly. Religious debates intensified. Governments struggled to control information crossing borders. The printing revolution became an invisible infrastructure supporting the Renaissance, the Reformation, the Scientific Revolution, and eventually the Enlightenment. Knowledge itself became increasingly scalable. Decision 8. James Watt perfected the steam engine. James Watt did not invent steam power. His crucial decision was to devote years to solving one seemingly technical engineering problem: efficiency. By introducing the separate condenser and refining engine design, Watt transformed steam engines from expensive pumping machines into practical sources of industrial power. Factories multiplied, railways emerged, steamships crossed oceans, industrial production accelerated. Modern economic growth became possible on an unprecedented scale. Few engineering decisions have influenced civilization so profoundly. Machines no longer depended entirely on rivers or wind. Humanity had entered the age of fossil fuel-powered industry. Decision 9. Abraham Lincoln chooses to preserve the Union. By the spring of 1861, the United States faced its greatest constitutional crisis. 11 southern states would eventually declare secession. Many political leaders hoped compromise could still avoid a catastrophic war. Abraham Lincoln confronted a decision unlike any previous American president. Should the federal government accept secession and allow the Union to dissolve peacefully? Or should it use military force to preserve the nation? Lincoln chose preservation. After the attack on Fort Sumter, he called for volunteers to suppress the rebellion, beginning the American Civil War. The decision came at an extraordinary cost. More than 600,000 soldiers, and by some modern estimates, perhaps as many as 750,000, would lose their lives. Entire regions were devastated. Families were permanently divided. Yet the long-term consequences extended far beyond the battlefield. Union victory preserved the United States as a single federal republic rather than a collection of competing nations. The war also created the conditions for the abolition of slavery through the 13th Amendment. Following Reconstruction and later industrial expansion, the United States emerged as one of the world's largest industrial economies and eventually one of the dominant geopolitical powers of the 20th century. Historians continued debating how different the world might have looked had North America developed into several independent rival states. What remains clear is that Lincoln's decision shaped not only American history, but the international balance of power for generations. Decision 10. The United States invests in the Manhattan Project. In 1939, several physicists, including Albert Einstein, whose signature appeared in a famous letter drafted primarily by Leo Szilard, warned U.S. President Franklin Roosevelt that Nazi Germany might attempt to develop atomic weapons. Roosevelt faced a decision under enormous uncertainty.
no one knew whether an atomic bomb could actually be built. No one knew who might build one first. The United States chose to invest unprecedented financial, scientific, and industrial resources into what became the Manhattan Project. The project eventually produced the world's first nuclear weapons. In August 1945, atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Historians continued to debate whether these bombings were militarily necessary, politically motivated, or whether alternative paths might have ended the war. There is no comparable debate, however, about their historical significance. Humanity entered the nuclear age. For the first time, civilization possessed the technological capacity to destroy itself. Paradoxically, nuclear weapons also became central to Cold War deterrence. Many scholars argue that the fear of mutual nuclear destruction discouraged direct war between the United States and the Soviet Union. Others contend that humanity survived several nuclear crises largely through luck and careful diplomacy. Either way, Roosevelt's decision to pursue nuclear research permanently altered international politics, military strategy, science, and global security. The shadow of that decision remains with us today. Each of these 10 decisions occurred in different centuries, on different continents, and under vastly different circumstances. Some were made by emperors, others by inventors, others by elected leaders responding to crises. Yet all shared one remarkable characteristic. None of the people making them could fully foresee their consequences. Alexander could not imagine modern Europe. Gutenberg could not predict the Internet. James Watt never envisioned satellites or artificial intelligence. Lincoln did not know the United States would become a global superpower. The individuals changed history, but history multiplied their decisions far beyond their own lifetimes.
Looking across these 10 decisions reveals several recurring patterns. The first is that transformative decisions rarely create change from nothing. Instead, they accelerate forces already building beneath the surface. Printing spread because literacy, commerce, and urban life were expanding. Industrialization succeeded because scientific knowledge, coal resources, capital investment, and engineering expertise had matured simultaneously. Columbus sailed west because advances in navigation, shipbuilding, and state financing made long-distance exploration increasingly possible. Great decisions often act as catalysts rather than isolated miracles. The second pattern is that technological decisions usually outlive political ones. Empires rise and fall, dynasties disappear, borders change, but technologies continue evolving. The printing press eventually produced newspapers, telegraphs, radio, television, computers, and the Internet. The steam engine led to railroads, internal combustion engines, electrical grids, aviation, and modern logistics. Nuclear physics produced not only weapons, but also nuclear energy, advanced medicine, and fundamental scientific discoveries. Political leaders often influence centuries. Technological breakthroughs can influence millennia. The third pattern concerns unintended consequences. Few historical decisions produce only the outcomes their makers intended. Constantine strengthened Christianity, but also transformed European politics for centuries. Columbus sought Asia, not the permanent integration of two hemispheres. The Manhattan Project ended one era of warfare while beginning another defined by nuclear deterrence. History consistently reminds us that complex systems rarely respond in simple ways. Every decision opens opportunities while creating entirely new uncertainties. Finally, these stories demonstrate the relationship between individuals and larger historical forces. Some historians emphasize geography, economics, demographics, and climate. Others stress leadership and human agency. The evidence suggests both matter. Alexander succeeded partly because Macedonia possessed an unusually effective military.
James Watt benefited from Britain's commercial economy. Lincoln governed during an era of industrial transformation. Individuals make decisions, but the possibilities available to them are shaped by the societies in which they live. History emerges from the interaction between human choice and historical circumstance.
Not all historic decisions reshape civilization in the same way. Broadly speaking, they fall into three categories. The first are political decisions. Caesar crossing the Rubicon, Lincoln preserving the Union, Constantine supporting Christianity. These decisions primarily transformed institutions, governments, and societies. The second are technological decisions. Gutenberg's printing press, James Watt's steam engine, the Manhattan Project. These altered humanity's capabilities. Once a transformative technology exists, it becomes extraordinarily difficult to reverse. The third are civilizational decisions. Alexander's Eastern campaigns, the end of Zheng He's voyages, Columbus's Atlantic expedition. These changed how entire regions interacted, exchanged knowledge, traded goods, and understood the world. Interestingly, history suggests technological decisions often have the longest-lasting effects because they continue influencing societies regardless of which governments happen to rule. Political systems change. Technologies accumulate. Every generation inherits the inventions of previous generations, whether it intended to or not.
Any documentary built around pivotal historical decisions must acknowledge an important limitation. History is rarely shaped by one moment alone. Many scholars caution against the great person interpretation of history, arguing that structural forces, including geography, economics, institutions, disease, climate, and demographics, often matter more than individual leaders. This criticism has merit. Had Gutenberg abandoned printing, someone else may eventually have refined similar technology. Had Watt failed, another engineer might have improved steam power. Likewise, if Columbus had never sailed, European exploration of the Atlantic would almost certainly have continued through other expeditions. Counterfactual history, asking "what if," is useful because it reveals historical possibilities, but it cannot provide certainty. We can identify decisions that clearly influenced events. We cannot know with confidence exactly how alternative histories would have unfolded. The value of studying these moments lies not in imagining fantasy timelines, but in appreciating how human choices interact with larger historical forces.
The world continues to be shaped by consequential decisions. Governments decide how to regulate artificial intelligence. Scientists determine which technologies deserve investment. Central banks respond to financial crises. Companies choose whether to pursue new forms of automation, biotechnology, or renewable energy. Military leaders make decisions affecting regional security. International organizations negotiate responses to climate change and emerging pandemics. Most of these choices will appear ordinary in today's headlines. History suggests otherwise. Many of tomorrow's defining moments will not look extraordinary while they are happening. The people making them rarely know they are standing at a turning point. Future historians may identify decisions being made right now in research laboratories, corporate boardrooms, legislative chambers, and diplomatic negotiations as the moments that quietly redirected the 21st century. That realization encourages humility. History is not only something we inherit, it is something we continue to create.
When we look back across thousands of years, history can seem inevitable. Empires rise, technologies advance, civilizations evolve. But when viewed up close, history looks very different. It is filled with uncertainty, with imperfect information, with people making difficult choices whose consequences they cannot fully understand. That may be the greatest lesson these 10 decisions offer. The individuals who shaped history were not gifted with knowledge of the future. They simply acted within the limits of their own time. Some succeeded brilliantly. Some made tragic mistakes. Some changed the world without realizing it. Centuries later, billions of people still live with the consequences, which raises a fascinating question. If future generations were to identify the 10 decisions that changed the 21st century, which choices being made today would make that list? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this documentary and want more deep dives into the turning points that shaped our civilization, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for future documentaries.